I don't know John Calipari from a can of paint. He's never met me. I've never met him. And I am not saying that he isn't a good coach. To be able to coach as long as he's coached at the different places that he's coached, and when you see the impact that he's had on these places, whether that's Memphis, whether that's Kentucky, it would be foolish to criticize him and say that he's not a good coach, because that would be unequivocally wrong. But let's understand that there are expectations for different positions, different people, different coaches. I expect much more from a Coach K or a Roy Williams than I do a coach at a lower tier school. You have more resources. You're able to recruit better. You're able to get better players. So the expectation is much higher for those type of coaches. John Calipari is in that class. In fact, John Calipari is in a slightly different class, and I'm going to explain. Going into March Madness, there was a lot of talk about John Calipari and how, lack of a better term, comfortable his spot should be as Kentucky's head coach. You see, John Calipari, I think, is one of the best recruiters in college sports right now. His track record of recruiting is undefeated and honestly unmatched. From the amount of people that he has brought to his schools, whether that is, again, Memphis or Kentucky, the amount of people that eventually see themselves go to the NBA is staggering. In that sense, I can't take anything away from John Calipari. So the question is, Jalen, why are people questioning his relevancy, his stature as the Kentucky basketball head coach going into the national or the March Madness tournament? It's because when you have, how do I explain this in a better way, in a different way than what people have already said? If I give you a box of crayons and I give somebody else a box of crayons, and the box of crayons I give you is 150 crayons in that box, and a box that I give somebody else has, let's say, 30 or 40 crayons. I expect the person with 150 crayons to color a more beautiful, a more elaborate piece than the one that has 30, 40 crayons. You have more to work with, so I expect you to do more with what you have. That's in life. If you have more advantages than somebody else, I expect those advantages to help you get further in life. Well, I don't think that there's been anybody in the history of college basketball as a coach that has had more advantages as far as recruiting, as far as players, than John Calipari. In fact, I don't want to do this, but I think I have to. Now, again, this isn't me hating. This isn't me being unbiased. Or I'm sorry, this isn't me being biased. This is me being as unbiased as I can. We talk about crayons and we talk about having advantages. Let me first paint this picture for you. College basketball is not the NBA. That's obvious. College basketball is not NBA. And depending on where you go, depending on what school you go to, depending on what your record looks like, it's very rare that you're going to see an abundance of NBA players during a season. There's not that many NBA players in college basketball. It is extremely difficult to go from the NBA, to go from college to the NBA. There's not that many slots, and your talent level has to be on another level. To see 4 or 5 NBA players in a regular season for a team is rare, to say the least. There's not that many NBA players walking around college. I'll just be real with you. So, to have an NBA player on your team is special. And to have an NBA player on your team in college, like to have a player that they know, that they can see, that is NBA talent. To have that is special. You have to be a good recruit to get those type of players. So I said I didn't want to do this, but I have to. I have to emphasize my point exactly. I'm not going to go to Memphis. I'm not going to talk about Derrick Rose. I'm not going to talk about Tyreek Evans. I'm not going to talk about Dejon Wagner. I'm not going to talk about Chris Douglas Roberts. What I'm going to do is I'm going to strictly stick with Kentucky. And one of the reasons why I didn't want to do this, because it is a long list, but I have to do this. I am going to name you every single player that was drafted that played under John Calipari. Now, when I hear this list, and I've seen people do this, and I see people criticize, well, they didn't do anything in the NBA. Again, that has no bearing on the fact that they're an NBA, they're a player in college that was good enough to get drafted. We're not talking about their NBA skill. We're talking about their college skill. To be drafted from college to the NBA, you have to have skill above the rest. Here is a list of players that John Calipari, just in Kentucky, that he has coached. John Wall, DeMarcus Cousins, Patrick Peterson, Eric Bledsoe, Daniel Orton, Enes Freedom, now I guess his name is, Brandon Knight, Josh Harlanson, DeAndre Liggins, Anthony Davis, Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, Terrence Jones, Marcus Teague, Deron Lamb, Darius Miller, Nerlens Noel, Archie Goodwin, Julius Randle, James Young, Karl Anthony Towns, Willie Cauley-Stein, Trey Lyles, Devin Booker, the Harrison Twins, Dakari Johnson, Jamal Murray, Skal Labissiere, Tyler Ulis, De'Aaron Fox, Malik Monk, Bam Adebayo, Kevin Knox, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jared Vanderbilt, Habalo Diallo, PJ Washington, Tyler Euro, Keldon Johnson, Tyrese Maxey, Emmanuel Quickley, Nick Richards, Isaiah Jackson, Brandon Boston Jr., Shaden Sharp, Ty Washington, Carson Wallace, and Chris Livingston. That's just Kentucky. Again, take out Derrick Rose. That was in Memphis. Take out Tyreek Evans. That was at Memphis. Take out Chris Douglas Roberts, that was in Memphis. Take out DeJohn Wagner, that was in Memphis. The reason why John Calipari's name right now is being questioned as why his job is so secure is because you've had this much talent. Again, I'm not talking about what they did in past college. I'm talking about what they did in college. You've had this abundance of talent. Yet and still, you only have one national championship, and that was with Anthony Davis. You've had number 1 overall picks in John Wall. You've had incredible players like Devin Booker, who came off the bench in college. You had Jamal Murray. You've had so many players, yet and still you only have one. And that's even if you include Memphis, you only have one championship. You see, at some point, resumes have to matter. Again, I'm not criticizing, I'm not talking about John Calipari as a personal person, because I don't know him personally. I'm talking about what you have put on paper. And what you have put on paper is one of the greatest collections of talent that has ever been coached. Yet and still, you only have one national championship. Now, again, some of these players obviously didn't pan out in the NBA. Some of them had incredible careers, i.e. Jamal Murray, Devin Booker, Anthony Davis, John Wall. So you look at those players, right? Like, if you want, because I know some people having a tough time separating NBA from college. Cool. If you want to look at John Wall, 5-time All-Star. If you want to look at DeMarcus Cousins, 4-time All-Star. If you want to look at Anthony Davis, NBA champion. If you want to look at Julius Randle, most improved player, 3-time All-Star. If you want to look at Karl Anthony Towns, Rookie of the Year, 4-time All-Star. If you want to look at Devin Booker, 4-time All-Star. He's also been to an NBA Finals. If you want to look at Jamal Murray, NBA champion. If you want to look at De'Aaron Fox, All-Star. If you want to look at Malik Monk, probably going to win 6th Man of the Year this year. If you want to look at Bam Adebayo, 3-time All-Star. If you want to look at Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, 2-time All-Star, front runner for the MVP right now. If you want to look at PJ Washington, an important piece for the Dallas Mavericks right now. If you want to look at Tyler Hero, 6th Man of the Year. Tyrese Maxey, All-Star, one of the best point guards in the East. If you want to look at Keldon Johnson, a very important piece for the Spurs. These are players, this is their NBA resume. What do you think they were doing in college? Playing under John Calipari. Yet and still, he only has one championship. Again, resumes got to matter sometime. And I'm not one to call for somebody's job that doesn't deserve their job to be lost. But when you have that collection of talent and have one championship to show for it, there is an issue. There is a disconnect somewhere. Because again, it is incredibly difficult to recruit an NBA style player for your college team. He's had a bevy of them. He's had so many, it's hard to count. He's had more, I think he's had 47 players get drafted from Kentucky, just Kentucky. And 35 of them are first-round picks, I believe. My question is, when do resumes matter? When? Because as a recruiter, A1. As a recruiter, one of the best to ever do it, to get this much talent at one place. As a recruiter, the amount of money that John Calipari has produced for Kentucky is astronomical. But as a coach, what do you have to show for your coaching acumen outside of one championship? Which honestly, don't get me wrong, I understand that championships are great and that's what you play for. And not everyone's able to get one. But there's almost a sense of that championship looks worse and worse when we talk about John Calipari, because while yes, you did it, you should have much more. We should look at him. We look at John Calipari as a obviously all-time great coach. Honestly, it's not because of the wins and losses, it's because of who you've coached. Which then the conversation expands to, well, he's coached that much or that much talent. How has he not been able to get the most out of them? Now, on a personal level, obviously, he's changed a bunch of people's lives. He got a bunch of people to the NBA. But we're talking about the college realm. And this all stems from Kentucky, again, underachieving and losing early. And they were the number 2 seed and lost to Oakland, a much, much smaller school. Doesn't have as many NBA players, doesn't have as many recruit options, doesn't have as much money to operate with. This is coming off of last year losing to St. Peter's. In these conversations, when we talk about criticism, there's a lot of people that would say I'm wrong, or would say that people are wrong for questioning the quote-unquote great John Calipari. Again, I'm not questioning his personality. I'm not questioning his personal being because I don't know him. I think it would be extremely disingenuous to comment on something that I don't know about. And honestly, isn't really my business to talk about because I don't know him in that space. But what I can critique or question is, how do you have this much talent and you have so little you've done so little with it? In a space where this much talent would put anybody else over the top. Again, I don't think you understand how rare it is to get an NBA player on your team. If we look this year, look at UConn, the best team in college basketball by a long shot, in my opinion. They have 1, maybe 2 NBA players. My team, North Carolina, they have maybe 1, Armando Bacot, and RJ Davis just won ACC Player of the Year. I don't think he's making it to the NBA. I think we have to really question why John Calipari's, or let me say it like this. I think we should start having the conversation and having a thorough conversation as to how we should really view John Calipari as a coach. Because as a recruiter, probably the greatest to ever live in college basketball. But as a coach, for some reason, you have all this talent and you haven't been able to maximize in college. And now you look in yet another year that his team is one of the top seeded teams in college basketball in March. Again, I think they were ranked second in their region. And you lose to a 15 seed in Oakland. A team that does not have an NBA player on the roster. When you, John Calipari, for yet another year, have multiple. Oh man, you stayed to the end of the video. I appreciate you. If you like what you saw, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you'll never miss any content from your boy. You can also go back and watch past episodes, past clips, and don't forget that the Unpopular Podcast, new episodes drop every Wednesday and Saturday. Appreciate you.